does that. Now I'm under pressure. I have to come up with something. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. I think it was every other table. Hey, this is a full room. Almost.
Yeah.
There's still seats up here in the dreaded first row section. But hello to those watching on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. Please, we appreciate it if you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for joining us. I told you, you caught me off guard. I wasn't ready. I had pizza, so I'm gonna brag. I wear my food very well. I had to go do a quick inspection to make sure. And I did. I had tomato sauce. So we're going to be in chapter 25 of the Acts of the Apostles. And looking forward to this, winding down. And as we come to the end of Acts, I encourage you to be thinking, where would you like to go next? You know, which book or books? Or I know we talked about doing an afternoon thing. I'd like to get it started, maybe in next month. So I would suggest maybe, I can't say Thursday. Well, Thursday afternoon would be a good time. They get together and do it off of any questions that you have, maybe questions on a sermon, or just questions in general that you have about the Bible and you want to talk about it. If you give them to me ahead of time, it makes it a little bit better, but it'd be even more fun if we looked them up together and learned in that way. Huh. Can anyone guess who's coming in?
What's his name? Eustace?
At least I made it.
At least he made it. I have to confess something. I didn't know what time a meeting started last night. And of all people, who do you think I sent a text to ask what time it started? And then she got a quick text back saying, isn't it funny that I asked you? And we were both late for it. I can't say it. I was. You weren't late. Let's pray. Most loving God, we thank you for the day. We thank you for the rain that fell. We thank you, Lord, for all things. We thank you for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us in our lifetime. And we thank you for the blessing of the new day. And we thank you for the blessing of being able to gather here in your house, to be able to gather as your church in your house. Be with us as we read and study your word. Reveal to us things that we have overlooked for so long. Help us to understand it in a whole new way. And this we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Excuse me. I have a sip of my favorite beverage, iced tea. I could do a Jackie Gleason whenever he would take a drink. It would be appropriate for Bible study, though, would it? Hey, the first verses 1 through 12, they are some key verses in this because it sets the direction for the remainder of the book of Acts as we go through. Because one, it's going to show us how Paul reached Rome, how he ended up being there in Rome, and it tells us a crucial story as we see Paul, he's ready. If I need to appeal to Caesar, I will do that. I'll do whatever it takes. Then he also says that he's willing to die. That's what we're going to talk a little bit about. Pontius Festus, or Festus. Festus. Goodness sakes.
That's Hagen.
Yeah. They don't know much about it. He was a procurator of Rome, and not a whole lot is known, but what is found about him, it speaks favorably of him. And what? Guess what? You can't whisper very well.
They don't listen to you.
They don't listen to me at all, do they? Okay. You don't whisper very well.
It was hard.
It was hard. Okay. Danny, can you separate?
She answered.
Okay. See what I deal with? You should be here. I need help. But we know that he had a desire to rule, and he wanted to rule, and he wanted to rule fairly. And so, it shows because he even traveled to Jerusalem. Just right 3 days after arriving in the province, he's ready to go. And he knows about the nature of the city. He knows about the violence that has been spoken of that area, yet he is willing to go there to rule. It's obvious as we get in here reading that Paul's trial is weighing very heavily on the minds of the religious leaders. It's troubling them. They like to get it over with. Some people like to let's end it, let's kill him now. There's a lot of people they're pushing to get this done. But they're really pushing it hard because they know their case is weak, and the more authorities who come in to hear the case, they know that weakens it by the day. So as we get down through that in verses 6 and 7, Luke gives us a very familiar scene as we will read about the trial. It's just that same scenario. But he also adds in here, he says that he uses terms like many and serious when he's speaking of the charges, and in the Christian Standard Bible it says many serious charges. So he has added that and showing that it has been escalated to a little bit based upon how they charged Paul earlier on by making him more of a civil type of case. And then we're going to hear in verses 8 and 9 that Paul's going to again deny the charges, and he's going to be asked if he wants to go to Jerusalem for another trial. And then we're going to watch Festus change his mind. I can't believe I called him Festus.
I just got that.
I cannot believe I said that. So we're going to watch him as he changes his mind when we get down to, because when we're in verses 8 and 9, he's going to change his mind, change his strategy, his thinking, and kind of revert back to what he says in verses 4 through 5. So we're going to see him have a little change of heart. And when we get to verse 10, Paul wants nothing to do with this switch that they're suggesting. And we're going to meet the 40 men again, the 40 men who had sworn an oath to fast and do all this just so they could ambush Paul and kill him. We're going to meet them again. Now, it's been a few days, so their oath that they had sworn about fasting is probably expired by now. They still want to kill Paul. The oath is over. We're still going to kill him. What is he doing?
I killed Paul.
I can't do anything with him. He's yours. You married him. So there. So again, the charges that have been brought against Paul are civil charges, which allows them to take it to escalate the trial the way they have, because they're saying that he wronged the Jews. They said that he defiled the temple by allowing the Gentiles to come in, and all those charges that we talked about last week, they're kind of still hanging out there. So, and they're serious enough to demand the death penalty. And again, Paul says he's willing to die if they can prove the charges were true. So that's his defense. He has a good defense, but he just throws it, this is true. I'm willing to face the consequences. He's got a good defense lawyer, doesn't he? So 3 days after Festus, again, I can't believe this. 3 days after Festus arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. The chief priests and the leaders of the Jews presented their case against Paul to him, and they appealed, asking for a favor against Paul that Festus summoned him to Jerusalem. They were, in fact, preparing an ambush along the road to kill him. So here they are. I don't know if their fasting oath is still good or still valid, but their intention is still there. Festus, however, answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea and that he himself was about to go there shortly. Therefore, he said, let those of you who have authority to go down with me and accuse him if he has done any wrong. So he's inviting all of those to come, and this gets really intense when we get further on in this. When he had spent not more than 8 or 10 days among them, he went down to Caesarea. The next day, seated at the tribunal, he commanded Paul to be brought in. When he arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him and brought many serious charges that they were not able to prove. Here again, those same charges they're bringing up against him. Then Paul made his defense. Neither against the Jewish law, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I sinned in any way, which he has proven time and time again. In verse 9, but Festus, wanting to do the Jews a favor, replied to Paul, are you willing to go up to Jerusalem to be tried before me there on these charges? So he's placating. He's trying to calm the Jews down here. So Paul's going to tell him, I am standing at Caesar's tribunal where I ought to be tried. I have done no wrong to the Jews, as even you yourself know very well. Then, if then I did anything wrong and am deserving of death, I am not trying to escape death. But if there is nothing to what these men accuse me of, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. Then after Festus conferred with his council, he replied, you have appealed to Caesar you will go. Now,
Any Roman citizen had that right?
right,
Yeah.
they had that right. So there's some debate as to whether Festus was legally bound to remand the case, take the case to Caesar. So it doesn't really say that in here.
So much ego involved.
There is. There's a lot of chest being puffed up right in here. It doesn't even say if he could even handle the case himself. And if he had decided to hear the case himself and he made the negative decision or wrong decision, Paul still could have appealed it to Caesar. So he really doesn't have any other choice but to transfer Paul to Rome. So we're going to be.
Do you want some water?
I know what it was.
Oh, you didn't have your pinky up.
That's much better. So we're going to meet King Agrippa and his sister Bernice. And they're going to come to visit Festus. King Agrippa, also known as Agrippa II. He was the son of Herod Agrippa I and great-grandson of Herod. So this man's got a good lineage. He was about 30 years old, northeast of Palestine, and he did hold the title of king. And his background, the background he brought with him, his lineage and all, qualified him to hear Paul's case. Now this is the interesting part when you read about Agrippa and Bernice. Agrippa II and his sister, they came to Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Bernice had a tendency to support the Jews, so she had like a vested interest in it. But she lived a very extravagant and reckless type of life, a very wasteful type of life. And she had this incestuous relationship with her brother Agrippa. So she's not the best of people. But in those days in Rome, and that's when you can't say when in Rome. You can't say it here. Mm-hmm. But that was the lifestyle, and that was very, very familiar. So several days later, verse 13, several days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived in Caesarea and paid a courtesy call on Festus. Since they were staying there several days, Festus presented Paul's case to the king, saying, there's a man who was left as a prisoner by Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews presented their case and asked that he be condemned. I answered them that it is not the Roman custom to give someone up to destruction before the accused faces the accusers and has an opportunity for defense against the charges. there again, there, Steve, like you said, that's a citizen. It did entitle him to that privilege. So verse 17, so when they had assembled there, and Luke inserts himself in here, I did not delay. Because he is here, but he is writing in such a sense that he has inserted himself so he can tell the story on behalf of Festus. The accusers stood up but brought no charge against him of the evils I was expecting. Instead, they had some disagreements with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus, a dead man. Paul claimed to be alive. Festus had trouble with, he did not understand the resurrection. He couldn't comprehend that, and the Jews just flat out, didn't believe it. They did not accept it. And so Festus is going to confess here. He's not capable of handling this case. He's going to tell him, I'm not the right person to do it. He said, since I was at a loss in a dispute over such things, I asked him if he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding these matters. But when Paul appealed to be held for trial by the emperor or his majesty, and that's an interesting thing right here, and I forgot the Greek word, but there's a Greek word and it's used 4 different ways in a short span of a few verses. It's used as emperor, it's used as his majesty, it's used as Lord, and used as king. And I cannot remember, his with an S. I cannot remember the word. But it's really different ways here. And then I say that I'm lost. Okay, I ordered him to be kept in custody until I could send him to Caesar. Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow you will hear him, he replied. So I love how Luke sets this trial up. Luke does a really good job of writing. And I like how he sets this stage, because he does some contrasting here, as he has that he paints Paul in this lowly image of Paul, a prisoner who's been held against his will, and who's been tried numerous times, and is just probably trial weary from all that he's been through. And he puts that image of Paul against the high-ranking officials and the prominent leading men of the city, and also along with Agrippa and Bernice. So he just, to me, he paints that picture in such a way that, we can look upon Paul and think, he doesn't stand a chance. He's outnumbered, he's outclassed. It's just not going to be good here.
And he's not exaggerating anything, Luke here.
No, he doesn't.
I mean, the whole thing's truth, and I've heard this, heard argued in passages like this. Somebody was saying that he was really bringing him down lower, just to give sympathy from people, and even us. I've been a few here. There's nothing more false than that. Paul was everything that Luke described him.
Yeah. But it's something how he tries to tone him down a little bit, because I can't see Paul being quiet. We know that.
Oh.
We know of that affliction.
I called you Paul for the first time I ever saw you.
I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not even going to look your way. But he does such a good job, and I think throughout the book of Acts, he does a really good job of placing us as the reader in these different situations. Along the road, or on a boat, or on a ship. We're there, and we're experiencing that, and we're feeling that. I almost got seasick a couple times. Think about that one. But, so, verse 23 said, the next day Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and entered the auditorium with the military commanders and prominent men of the city. Now, this is an impressive gathering. Now, it doesn't say that here, but so we know that through history, there are 5 ranking officials that are gathered right here. And each ranking official has a cohort. A cohort, so 5 high ranking, each have a cohort. Each cohort consists of 5,000 men. So they were known as officers, the officers were known as commanders of 1,000. So we know that there were 5 cohorts stationed at Caesarea. So it's just not a few people who gathered here to listen to this. There are a lot of people. And I think Luke does another outstanding job with this. Because again, that comparing and contrasting against Paul, this probably disheveled looking guy, against all of the people decked out in their finest attire and finest of military uniforms. And just, it's all of them against Paul. And I just think that I always see that.
It's Paul and God.
Yeah.
That's where his strength comes from.
Paul knew whose he was, and to have that confidence. But it's just, again, there's at least 25,000 or more people there at this, in this arena for this event. When Festus gave the command, Paul was brought in. So there again, there's all these people there, and here he comes in. Then Festus said, King Agrippa and all men present with us, you see this man? The whole Jewish community has appealed to me concerning him, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he should not live any longer. Paul is a strong, strong man. To be able to stand there. And I think this is one of the times that it doesn't hurt to just stop. And that's one of the things that I've talked about with some of you, that Lectio Divina, when it's the divine reading, when you read, it's much slower than normal. And when you do, if you come across the word and you stumble on the word, it's the Spirit saying, whoa, go back. You missed something. Go back and read that. And this is one of those that I do not think that you can hurry through without stopping periodically to just take in the scene and what is going on, the dynamics of all of this. Because here again, at least over 25,000 people assembled there. And then they bring Paul into that room.
I try to put myself into these situations, whoever the main character is here. I mean, the Christian on God's side, on the winning team. And if you can imagine, it's 1950, and you're down south of the United States, and you get busted for speeding, and then they start putting it up, and then you go before the people, and you irked somebody on the way into the courthouse, and they went and told everybody else, hey, this guy did, snarl over here, whatever. And that's when I got to feeling pretty bad about the situation, and I believe that's probably how Paul could have felt. I mean, there was a lot of people against Paul.
I thought this was going to be a confessional day for me. 50?
Well.
Okay. But now, Ronnie brings up a good point. Is, I've always asked, where are you in this story?
Mhm.
I sit with Agrippa to try to just look upon Paul as he's brought in, to try to see him as they saw him. Just of course, they're looking down upon him anyway, but the way and the manner in which they looked at him. And then also to think, how would we have felt walking into such a gathering when everyone in there is against you?
Well, that Paul had to have some mighty convincing evidence to the contrary of what they're saying, because, and of course, like I said, he knew God was with him, but because like you said, he's pretty cool here. And to get through all of this, he had to have some pretty convincing stuff. So Paul saying, as soon as he walks in, they're all saying, he's guilty. He's guilty. Now, prove otherwise. And it's not like, you know, our Constitution says, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty. Well, he was guilty until proven innocent. And so they had to know that he must have some pretty convincing stuff, and I think Agrippa was probably sitting there waiting on him, just waiting on the shoe to drop, so to speak.
The sandal. So, but that, you raise a good point there. In previous chapters, the Spirit of the Lord spoke to Paul, and the angel spoke to Paul to offer encouragement and let him know you're not gonna die here. But it never is said in any of this during the trial. But even as difficult as it was for people to understand his story, I could just hear him telling it with so much conviction that they had to listen to him. And then we saw earlier that he was called back several times to come and just to consult or preach and teach to some of the leaders, because they're just so amazed at this story, and he is sowing seeds and bringing believers to Christ.
You know, I'll say this, I'm sure, okay?
No, you won't.
Yeah, I'll try.
Let's be honest.
I'll try.
Okay. So you all thought I was winning.
Knowing how I feel as a Christian, as a preacher, as somebody who's been in the missions field, the things that I've seen you done, if I were confronted with death, I believe within my heart, if I were confronted with death, I would say, you know, whatever, because, I mean, I've told you, we fed 57 kids with 2 pounds of spaghetti. We've seen so many great things happen. We needed a truck payment one day. She goes in, when she comes out, she goes gets the mail, and there was a check with $17 more than what we needed from unknown, from just somebody that was a credit. So knowing things like that, you go into things with a little more, you're a little more comfortable going into it, because I've told a lot of people, I said, if you ever hear me backsliding, get a gun, shoot me right in the back of the head, because that's stupid, because of what we've seen. In Tanzania, there's a black stone, and Carolyn and Don Armstrong, if somebody had been bitten by a scorpion or a snake of some kind, they would go over there and they would put a little slice in it like you would, you know, like you're going to suck the poison out. But they set this black rock on there, and they just held it for a few seconds, and that black rock was affixed to them, however they moved. And of course, they didn't move; they were really sick. But anyway, in so much time, that black rock fell off, and when it did, the black rock had absorbed the poison. The person got up and they're fine. I mean, beyond fine. And I told Don, I said, "What? You know, where am I supposed to take it back to America and market this thing?" Then I said, "You know what? It would work. That's just God. That's God. He works with whatever's got there in that area. And in that place with that black rock, it's the most amazing thing in the world to me. Just, I mean, she's making it from like a piece of coal or coke. That's how I picture it.
We'll see how well that holds. We'll see how well this holds.
Chapter, it said that Paul had been in prison for at least 2 years, but he wasn't. He was like under house arrest, rather than being in the prison where people usually never come back out. Festus had to have known that, you know, because Felix would have told him about Paul.
Right.
Okay, so he has the background information on Paul, and probably realizes through Felix that this guy really hasn't done anything. They're just trying to silence him. And, you know, that's not in our jurisdiction. So I kind of wonder if Paul wasn't told ahead of time, hey, just appeal to Caesar. You know, we've delayed 2 years now in Caesarea. We're delaying here. Appeal to Caesar. That gets you out of the way of the Jewish leadership. And then, you know, and plus it puts it, well, like you said, he's going to talk in the next chapter to 25,000 people plus. Yeah. Get that chance to witness.
you brought up a good point. Christine Watson, tell me this is wild. I sent her a picture. I bought new frames. I got new glasses, and I sent her a picture. And I told the lady, I said, she's gonna look at this picture. Beard is wild. And so her reply was, "They look like your old frames. You really need to trim that beard."
Are you wearing her glasses now?
I'm
So
wearing
you're
her-
shaving in?
Yeah, hers. Don't get me started on that. The other day I was talking to a very good friend of mine, and, because you talked about how would we respond, in this situation. And it is a good question to ask yourself. And, but I was talking to a very good friend of mine, and we were talking about another mutual friend of ours. He's a Lutheran, a retired Lutheran pastor, but he is coming up against, some serious health issues. And my first response was my heart sank. And I, oh no. Because his son will be getting married in August, and his wife has said they don't think he's gonna make it. And it just tore my heart out. But then I thought, and then he went on to tell me, he said, but they are both in a good place and their faith is really strong. And I thought, where is mine right now? Then all of a sudden, I am the biggest doubter, and I just have thrown everything away to think that way. And it just, I don't know, so we don't know how we would react, but we do, we have those human moments when we just think the worst, but in a sense, the worst, that we think is actually the best. Sometimes we just have to really check ourselves when we're confronted with things like that. All right, I forgot where I stopped. Where did I stop?
You're ready to go on 25.
All right.
23.
No, I've already done.
No,
Oh,
25.
25, I was right the first time.
Thank you in the back.
Is that white?
Okay, just making sure. I found that he had not done anything deserving of death. But when he himself appealed to the emperor, I decided to send him. I have nothing definite to write to my lord or Caesar Nero about him. And that's an interesting thing, that Caesar didn't take on that lord title. He was a decent person there for a while, and he didn't accept that title, to be called lord or some other things. So therefore I have brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after this examination is over, I may have something to write. For it seems unreasonable to me to send a prisoner without indicating the charges against him. Then Agrippa's going to tell Paul, you have permission to speak for yourself. So tune in next week,
For his
same time,
response.
same YouTube channel or station or whatever feed, and we will get into Paul's defense, which is more of an offense than a defense. So thank you for staying with us, and we enjoyed your company. You are part of our family. So we love to see you here on a Sunday morning at 9:30, here in beautiful downtown Winfield. Speed limit's 35, I learned that. We're right behind the Speedway McDonald's. So stop in, come in and see us. We'd love to have you here Sunday nights. We won't have service this Sunday night because it's holiday weekend, and then on Wednesdays at 6:10. So thank you very much. May God be with you this week.